This vehicle, like most Jaguars, is all about proportion. And where it really works is the understanding of the architecture of the cabin relative to the rest of the car and relative to the wheels. It gives the car a complete totality. It's something that when you look at it visually, you can actually see with ease that the car is working. Fundamentally, the detailing of the car is familiar. There's no doubt about it. This car is an XJ8 or an XJ6. But as you walk around it, you see the proportion of the car, the package and the architecture has changed dramatically. If you look at the proportions of the 300 and 308, they're actually quite linear and quite long. A long overhang at the front and a longer overhang at the back. The overall proportion is one of length rather than anything else, and the lines are actually quite horizontal. On 350, which incidentally is a slightly bigger car, you notice the proportions are completely different. The car is more aggressive. It has a wedge shape to the belt line, the short overhang. And the cabin's quite far forward. Although it's higher, this proportion here gives the car a feeling of length because the glass area, this area, is much slimmer than the rest of the body. And the nice thing is, because of this wedge, as you come towards the rear, you have a much higher boot line. And then overall, the car actually looks more dramatic because the emphasis, the weight, is thrown towards the front. On this one, the weight almost looks like it's thrown towards the rear. On this one, it's thrown towards the front. And although it's much deeper in section and height, the overall effect is in fact a much sportier car. Because the architecture of this car is so different, the totality in the architecture is more correct. The cabin sits in a slightly more forward attitude, which actually balances the car better. Of course, a lot of these details along the front, along the grille, are familiar. And we've got the round lamps, but this time on the round lamps, we've made the lamps slightly longer to accentuate the width of the car. It's quite important. We didn't want it looking too tall because it is actually much taller than the original one. As we move towards the rear of the car, let's look at the glass area, the glass graphic. Very, very important. These graphics are actually still quite slim, and this helps to accentuate the length of the car. And complemented by the depth of the lower half of the car, and that gives the car the strength. So the top half gives it its length, the lower half gives it robustness and strength. So these graphics are very, very important to any car. And as we come to the rear of the opening, you see this beautiful line pulling round in itself, and this creating what I see as being the best part of the car, the best looking part of the car. This is complemented by the rear glass here, and the overall effect is a very slim pillar. It's what we call the C pillar. It's a very slim pillar. There's a lot of structure behind there. It's very strong. Now moving further back, as the wedge line of the belt comes up, it naturally gets us to position, much higher position than before. If you look at the difference, you see it's a good 5 or 6 inches different in height. Of course, this gives us a much bigger boot. And although it's high, it still manages to taper down very, very gently towards the back. Again, this tapered tail is very much what a Jaguar is about. And as you sweep towards the back of the car, we focus on these beautifully detailed tail lamps, these LED tail lamps. Again, a beautiful feature of the car. It's quite clear that this car sits beautifully on its wheels, and it has this robustness and this entity of being correct, and that's very, very important for a Jaguar. And the overall impression is one of power, confidence, slightly relaxed, but it's something that's just absolutely right. It's a beautiful car.